How are you doing? All right. I have had a ton of requests to start podcasting, and I've been so resistant to it on purpose. Make sure I'm actually recording my voice. Excuse me one second. Ah. All right. Now, what in this one's going to be, we had a call. This is the first call I've gotten from the VA. It's a late night call, and there was some 4,000 people on the call, veterans in the area. And this was new, and it was regarding the 2019 Community Care Act for the Veterans Administration. Okay, I thought I was recording the call. I screwed up. I just hit my sound recorder. I didn't know my sound recorder and my phone wouldn't work at the same time. I'm going to have to work on building that type of recording into the computer system. I don't have it as of right now. I promise you by the time the next one comes through there, I will have it, because I wanted you guys to hear the people asking questions that you normally wouldn't get to hear, and before I went and made comments and notes on them. Because a couple things took place. One, the guy running the show has probably attended every single conflict resolution course that's ever been known to man. Thank you very much for that question, and we hope to do better. And first, they gave us the stats of how great they're doing, and then they took two calls. Two of the questions was, how come the VA doesn't answer their phone? And I was like, but the guy, the call that they took was right after they turned around and says, well, our community call center has these high benchmarks they got to meet, and these people have a perfect record. And then the very next caller was, they don't answer their phone. I get into the message system, I leave a message, and no one ever gets back to me. And they gave their little stump speech. Well, there's something wrong there. They've got to call you back. And in other words, they outsourced it. It's been crap, and someone's feeding that guy bogus information. I'm not blaming the guy that held the town hall for not knowing there are frauds and cheats sucking money from the VA. All right. But you cannot turn around and give us the conflict resolution like we don't know what the hell's going on, because by the sounds of their voices, I guarantee you, I've been in the VA system longer than they've been alive. So the following call on that was from a woman. She goes, and she called it the dungeon. She says, oh, I want to reiterate calling the dungeon up there because, your call just falls down in there, gets chained up. No one ever calls you back. And then his answer, this is how I knew they came in here prepared with this conflict resolution 101. His answer was, well, we've been doing better with women veterans. Well, what's that have to, what are you screening calls based on male or female? Did you not hear? She's not getting through either. It's not an isolated incident. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I have maybe 1 out of 40 times gotten somebody to actually answer the phone when I call back that number. So it's understaffed, underwhelmed, and whatever they're saying for their high benchmarks, those benchmarks are not high enough. I can promise you that. So I'm going to look at my notes here. Hold on. I'm going to put my notes up on the screen for just a second. All right. So just show you, I did take notes of what didn't get asked before I start talking about what was asked. Okay. The VA's outsourced providers. Now they switched over from the I don't want to call it it was a choice program. Now it's the Community Care Act program. And I'll tell you right where I personally, so I can speak from personal experience on this one. One, the vendors that they're outsourcing to, well, they must get their paperwork done, because my local provider, so that I don't have to drive a 300-mile round trip when I have a medical, just a general, you hear my cough. I go over there and he goes, I don't see any notes on this. So the VA's bad paper keeping, which is done on purpose, because if they write things down, they have to address it at some point. And most of the veterans' problems wind up being environmental. That means job related. That does mean there's going to be a payout to the veteran, just like there would be in any other job in the country that got you hurt. If we burn the hell out of your lungs and you're coughing for the rest of your life, we pay you a little money. And I already get that money. So when I'm having a problem breathing, I'm not going to get more money. I just want to fix the problem of breathing right now. So I go over and see the community care doctor that I was given, only he's not a doctor. It is the local community care system that's open, clinic that's open from 8 to 12. They charge everybody $40. It's a physician's assistant, and the physician is not in the building. It's a physician's assistant operating under a doctor's license. That's how they got the paperwork through, so they can build. They can bill the VA and or Medicare for whatever these people are on. Same systems, different names. They literally rubber stamp, copy paste, and the VA's is changing just a touch because the new Champion Care, the community care, not the Champion Care. Champion Care was spousal care. My gosh, back in the 90s, and I don't want to get into that during this little bull session. I will provide some information that I can show you on Champ, and because quite frankly, they screwed over the spouses long time ago, long before Obama got in. It was right when Congress was lost to the Democratic Party in the year 2006 under George Bush. The people who took over those committees, and it was the Ohio senator, I can't remember his name right now, but he is the scumbag who screwed over every single spousal wife. And then they turned around and talked about all the money they were saving. And they took it from 85-year-old women who didn't know enough to fight. Neither did their kids because they'd all been done in-house. No one knew what was going on. And now it was a bureaucracy behind the wall in Cleveland. The name's going to pop in my head at some point. So now everybody knows there's the things called travel pay. I don't know if everybody knows, but any government employee who travels, any hotel you go to, there's a government set by Congress reimbursement rate. If you go to a hotel as of last year, 2019, the rate was $92.65. So no matter what hotel you went to, it may be $130, $140 a night. But if I showed my VA card, I got the government rate, which is the rate the government will reimburse travel for, which was $92. So I should get 100% of my money back, right? Wrong. The Texas Amarillo system, all on their own, decided to start paying people half because they had a pay-by-the-hour hotel down the street that was only charging $20 a day. And I don't know why they wanted to give everybody crabs, but that seems to be what the it's a sleazy pay. I'd rather sleep in my car if I had to. Guys, I'm going to put my glasses on. Some of you that follow me already know I get migraines and problems, and unfortunately I can't film under the lights, without the lights rather. So questions that didn't get asked. I didn't get a chance to ask about off-script medications, where since the year 2010, the VA has been issuing off-script medications, and gabapentin be one of the ones that I went on. It actually did reduce the pain in my back, legs, and everything else. But within 30 days, I started having this stutter, the vocal stutter you hear now. That started with gabapentin. That was 2011, I think I was given that. It never went away. That is a long-term side effect that I don't want to have. I'd rather be in pain than lose my brain. But one after another, every doctor has tried to push drugs that are psychotropic drugs with the intent purpose of manipulating the serotonin in the brain, and the side effect of that is pain relief. That's what we call off script. It's the side effect that is the pain relief. Never mind the primary goal is something psychological that I don't have. And I'm sure they want to calm me down as much as they possibly can, but I refuse to be sedated. Unlike the song, I want to be sedated. All right, off-script meds. I never got to ask about that, so I'm going to push it. If they're going to do these town halls, I'm going to push this. I want to push this video out to them, and I'm kind of curious if they're going to make me have to go get a Freedom of Information Act to get a copy of that original call. Because I can get a copy of the original call, I would like to bring that stuff back in. Because the platitude speak and the callers they brought in, especially the ones that were timed as the last caller, is like, I'd love to think the last 30 years of the VA has been so wonderful to me, and I just moved back to the area and I can't believe the massive amount of improvements. If you just moved back to the area after 30 years, you don't realize that they turned around and stuck all the Vietnam vets in there, and the geriatric care has crashed the system. So I don't really, and I'm not saying anything negative about it. The Community Care Act that got passed in 2009 by Trump, that was pushed for by them, really did bring in people who were hurt prior to 1975. This is a wonderful thing for Vietnam vets. They were screwed over. This was all post 9/11 stuff. I'll tell you who's fallen out of the loop on the Community Care Act. If you were in the first Gulf War, they still want to keep the first Gulf War veterans on the sidelines because of, and I'll put a link to it down in the comments below, guys. The VA already did the research on what they call Gulf War syndrome. It is a genetic deficiency in all human beings. I shouldn't say all, 25% of people cannot handle the amount of neurotoxins the other 75% can. So simply rubbing bug spray, this industrial bug spray on your body, like when I was in Africa, we rubbed this bug spray on us because they had mosquitoes so big they could carry your kids off. So you're smothering yourself in this industrial bug spray in Africa. And some people can't handle it. Well, so they did this 10-year study. It come out in 2008, and the Obama administration buried it. And I mean buried it. And with the never-Trumpers in Congress, they turned around and started the research all over again. It's a genetic deficiency. I pushed when I was with the VFW that, look, if this is true, then what we need to be doing is, as we bring people in enlisted, we need to be doing a genetic test, and we need to find out if they cannot handle this neurotoxin, your forward status is probably not going to be capable of handling it. One of the things that took place in the 90s was the multiple shots. They lied to us about what they were, and the whole point was to make you, as a super soldier, immune to neurotoxins. Only the shots were as bad as the freaking neurotoxins would have been. And it was shortly after that I started getting migraines. And we're not talking about headaches during the day from stress. My first migraine woke me up out of a dead sleep in the middle of the night. It was so much intense pain in the middle of my head. I had no clue what was going on. I was screaming. It felt like somebody had stuck a knife right through my head at the time, and it was like instantaneous for the headaches from back then. Went to see a neurologist. Because I was required personnel, I was informed that my neurologist informed me in San Diego that I would be back on the ship before 5, because if they kept you after 5, they could take you off the ship. So I had orders to be back on the ship before 5, going to the doctor's visit, so that they could not turn around and keep me for my neurological disorder that was presenting itself while on active duty. It's milk, folks. Where's my camera? Milk, yeah. Helps with my cough. Coats my throat a little bit. Not good milk either. Yeah. Okay. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up, like I said, it was the community care outsourcing. Now, I recently just had this happen because I was scheduled for a neurological appointment. We're waiting to put a cranial stent in my head to help the blood drain, because the MRI shows that the vessels in my brain have expanded up and there's a blockage preventing the blood from draining down, because my headaches have just gotten to be cluster fashion 4 or 5 times a week. Now, the records being sent to the doctors, not being sent to the doctors. So we get these third-party vendors, and one guy was specifically talking about pulmonology and neurology in Lubbock, Texas. I can tell anybody else watching this that's from the government, it's awful suspicious why all my outsourced doctors have the same landlord. Let's start with that money trail. The University of Texas is building a new building, and quote unquote for free. That's because they plan on getting all the contracts for every single service that comes out of the VA, and they're bringing all this stuff from Medicare over to the VA side. Excuse me. My problem with the University of Texas is starting in the year 2006. They've been bringing in guest speakers who say things like 90% of the Earth's population needs to be removed, to standing ovations of the medical staff at the University of Texas. You would think that wouldn't take place in Texas, but you got to remember, guys, the medical industry is flooded with mostly liberal thinkers. And I shouldn't even say liberal. I'm liberal. I don't care what you do. I should say leftist thinkers. People who think that other people breathing in and out without agreeing with them is an environmental hazard. Okay, so the records aren't being sent over to the providers. Past records are not showing up. I had one other MRI done in 98. It has never been found. So I had an MRI 5 months ago now. So as far as they're concerned, it was the first MRI of my brain in 27 years. So the neurologist had to do a second follow-up test. And then my nurse got busted. Now, I do have that audio. We won't pipe it into here. I'm going to do a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to go after some of these things point by point and hopefully help other people know what to look for. I'm sorry, guys. I'm projecting my voice hurts my throat, and it's the irritation in my throat that's causing the cough. So I'm going to go through these things point by point, but my registered nurse, because I don't even have a doctor at the VA, my registered nurse was leaning on the request for more records when she turned around and told me that she was a close personal friend of my neurologist, and he was leaving the country, and he said nothing was wrong. And I said, there's a request on your desk for more tests. And I wish I had video. The pissed off look that she got corrected again by me. I have to record these things because I have someone who does not have my best interests at heart. And I've had several of these. There is a culture inside there. For these people who go, I've had the greatest care ever, I'm glad you found one. The problem I see is, as we phase out older the younger ones are political doctors. They'll work for the money being offered type doctors. And the reason they're being offered so little money is no one else will hire them, I think. I'll put up another little... I went to ortho for my right shoulder. They did an MRI of the right shoulder and things. And the guy was asking, like, where's it hurt? And I was pointing, down in here. And I'm having this problem with my left shoulder now, too. And he goes, well, it shouldn't hurt there. I said, where's the MRI? Oh, right there. I said, doesn't that show a muscle pulled from the bone? Well, yeah. I said, then what does it matter where I say it hurts? You got a picture of a muscle being removed from the bone. And the little freaking physician's assistant is what he was, stormed out of the room, never came back. Still to this day, 5 years later, no diagnosis on that MRI image. And when they do diagnose, they don't acknowledge. Acknowledged by your primary means they have to do something about it. I waited 1.5 years for that MRI of the shoulder, and they send over instructions to make sure they make the narrowest of pictures that they possibly can. So when they were doing my back, They were taking these little bitty pictures. Then they took an x-ray of my spine that showed all this calcium up and down my spine. That was, like, well, there's why your back hurts. You got all these calcium spikes going all the way through your spine right next to that nerve. It's going to hurt. Okay, good. You've diagnosed the problem. We haven't talked about the problem. We don't talk about the problem. And that was one of the things where they did polling questions like, and when you ask for an emergency access to your doctor, is it 1 day, 3 days, or 5 days? Well, more than 40% said it was greater than 5 days. Well, how about, like I just said, it took me 3 weeks to get in, and then I couldn't even get seen by the doctor once I drove 300 miles. And the law says after an emergency room visit, which is why I had to go see the doctor, I couldn't breathe. I collapsed. I got taken to the emergency room. And after that, they're supposed to see you within 15 days. 3 weeks later, and then 5 days after the non-visit, I was back in the emergency room because I had bronchitis so bad in my lungs from an infection, probably from the nasty ass emergency room here locally, just to be honest. I live in southern New Mexico, and cleanliness is not anywhere near the doctors down here. This is called the Triangle of Death between Carlsbad, Artesia, and Roswell. All right. So some other issues while they were turning around, they were talking about, well, we'll get with the IT department. And I'm like, I would love to address the fact that the IT department, go to our website and visit this. Guys, when your website's down 4 out of the 5 days a week and we can't figure out which 4 it's going to be, your IT department is now stopping me from refilling my prescriptions. Your dead phone call center that's not working that you think is at 100% is stopping me from refilling my prescriptions. And we took out auto ship because there was so much fraud in the auto ship. Fake patients, getting fake. There was fraud in the system, guys. I'm so morally opposed to the fraud in the system. It's like my nurse and doctor seeming to know all my other doctors in the community. It makes you wonder if they're in a kickback for the recommendation and referral. I'm not saying that there is, but way too much. Like I said, all my referrals had the same landlord. That's all I'm saying on that one. All right. So we're at the mercy of the IT department. Now, they added a thing in there where my appointments, I can click a button and it adds it to my Windows calendar. And then I'm able to sync my Windows calendar to my Google's calendar. So that eventually talks to my phone. When everything syncs up, if everything syncs up. Problem winds up being is I got to go in and click on every single appointment. It's not a calendar, which you can get for free from about 900,000 website apps. All of them can talk directly to the Android phone and say, add this calendar to your Google Calendar or add this calendar to your iPhone calendar. Done deal, done and over with. The other problem wind up being that when you do community care, they can't text us yet. So here we are. Text has only been around since, 2005? Can't do it. 15 years, can't get that technology under control. And not even the third-party providers can do it. They're using human beings to call the day before. Guys, you want to talk about fraud, waste, and costs in the system, I guarantee you, even if you're paying those people minimum wage, it's $30 a month to buy the software that will outsource the information of reminders via text to where you can do things like, I don't know, provide a pin to how to drive to your location if it's out in BFE. These are the things you can do via text that you can't do via voicemail. It's like, where you at? Let me grab a pen, write down the address. Let me make sure I spelled and in New Mexico, my God, I'd feel for anybody that lives in Hawaii because I'd never be able to spell. They have no vowels there. But in New Mexico and Texas, everything's got great big long Spanish names that are kind of hard to spell. So you wind up with a, am I going to get it right answer? And me being tech savvy, I can go to the web, look them up, pull it in. I literally spend 30 to 40 minutes getting driving directions that should be click a button on my text message. I should have got the location the first time. That being said, now the other thing was on that, did you get a follow-up? Now they were talking about, and they very specifically worded this question, and I noticed they did, immediate care requests. Oh, because they're not talking about freaking regular scheduled, and they claim that there was these open slots for people who just walk in. Guys, what it used to be before Hillary Care got installed in the VA is for 2 hours early in the morning from 7 to 9, it was all open slots. And most of the doctors would turn around and tell you that they were done by then because guys would just sit there, wait around the room, be done by 9, go home. They didn't have these problems. They didn't even fill their appointments back then because people would come in. Now, the record keeping was crap. So people who walked in during that time, and I have one of those elderly doctors here local, and that's why I left him, that he's not typing in the computer properly. He's not stating things he's telling me. And because he's not doing it, when you go 5 years down the road, there's no connectivity to the information. So the connectivity, the lack of connectivity of the information has been used politically against the veteran. And it's used against us every time it can be used against us. For my migraine issue, it was written down in my service record. We requested my service. It was filed in the year 1995. It was filed again in 1996. They have acknowledged receipt of the service record. You cannot get that service record without a claim. They swear to God there was never a claim filed. They have 2 copies of receiving the record. You only get it attached to the claim, period. My house got robbed in 97. I lost my copy of my health record. It got stolen. Both of the claims that I submitted were shredded back in the Clinton's years. Just disappeared. But the records people know they got it. So back in the, right 1 year before Trump, we're sending off for my service records again. I was like, look, it's in my service record. I've read it. I've seen it. We send off to the 3 places that store your service record. And we kept getting these little cards back that says, your record's not here from all 3 places. You know, so what can you do? 1 week after Trump got elected, my service record showed up. Oh, Mr. Larson, did you know that your service connected for migraines? Yeah, I knew that. What they successfully did was avoided providing care for almost 20 years. See, when they make a mistake at the VA, the paperwork to correct the mistake has to be filed by me in such a timely manner that if I do everything perfect, they get 5 years to fix it. And even then, at the end of 5 years, they still are judging themselves and can say no and start the process over. It's that bad. It doesn't take 5 years to find out you were wrong. Really doesn't. Now, so the downloadable calendar is an issue. So if the IT department is going to be in charge of my healthcare, the IT department needs to get off its butt. There's some bald guy with a ponytail sitting in a room somewhere collecting a check who's not doing his job. He's playing too many Dungeons and Dragons or something. I don't know what's going on over there. So that was, and I got a little off topic, but the polling question was misleading because one, it was on immediate care. And so if I go to the doctor 90 days, she sends me to a specialist, he won't see me for 90 days. And almost inevitably, 1 week prior, he'll be on vacation or out of the country, and we'll have to reschedule for another 90 days out. All right? You see how this is working? He then finally gets to see me after we've gone 270 days. He sends the stuff over. They take 30 days to read it over there at my primary care at the VA. And then they schedule me for a reading of what they just read 90 days after they got that. So that's another 120 days on that previous 270. Guys, this is for 15 minutes worth of medical care. 15 minutes. And now with the Hillary stuff that they inserted about 2 months before Trump went into office, they've put physician's assistants in the middle of it so that they can say and claim to you that they're making appointments and keeping appointments. Well, a physician's assistant takes 20 months to be certified in the state of New Mexico. That is not a 9-year doctor. All right. And again, I'm going to bring this back. The reason the VA is different than other healthcare is the patients that go into the VA, 99 times out of 100, environmental exposure. Whether that be shrapnel flying through the air or, in my case, is heavy extreme RF radiation. Plus, I was in 2 different explosions. Whatever the BS is, I say 2. One explosion, and then I got thrown across the room when I got hit with 6,000 volts one time. I had entrance and exit wounds. Not even in my service record, by the way. Where we had burnt scar tissue. Lightning bolt just burned a hole through me. I was required personnel because I worked on the JOTS. I was not going anywhere. So they didn't have computer guys. You guys got to remember one thing. Computers didn't exist until the year 2002 in most homes. Less than 15% of the homes had computers. And the military wasn't much different. You didn't have a bunch of kids coming in who were computer savvy. They didn't exist. They took electronics guys and said, hey, here's a computer. Can you figure this crap out? We were still learning the basics of microprocessing at that time. So, yes, I did figure it out. And I was the only one on the West Coast for a long time. I don't even know if there was an East Coast guy. I really don't. The other thing was 3 guys, and this is where they started to cut it off short. The staff was being reported as insulting. And I do know what they mean by this. I've challenged my doctors. I've got this aggressive sounding voice. And it gets used against me every chance they can use it against me. I've had a Lubbock police officer brought into the room. He says, well, you're being disruptive. And I said, I'm being loud and direct. And you better know the difference before you put your hands on me. Because the woman was turning around and reading me information that wasn't correct. And we were discussing that ER visit where they put me on oxygen for 5 hours. And I was trying to explain to her, nowhere in that report was the fact that they had to administer oxygen. She goes, well, your O2 level's fine now. I said, we're not talking about now. We're talking about 7 weeks ago. That if something disruptive takes place in my lungs, apparently I will need oxygen. And I also wanted to comment on the fact that the oxygen gave me pain relief for almost 3 days after having my body saturated with oxygen. I wanted to explore that. I have since gone to tests where they found that my veins are calcified. Well, that sounds like that's a barrier to oxygen and nutrients getting in my veins. I'm withering away. There may be a perfectly simple explanation, but what causes it might have been environmental, and they don't want to acknowledge it. They've done this with several things in the vets. The Camp Lejeune being the most obvious one. I've got a friend who is Camp Lejeune for drinking JP5 jet fuel. And guys, I was on the USS Ogden. We carried jets and helicopters, and I promise you, every single water fountain had rainbows of JP5 in it. It's just a hazard of being in an air wing type portion of the Navy. They find, and this gets into that neurotoxins that we were talking about, where people can't handle it. So if you're drinking JP5, you're smelling, at some point the body becomes saturated and can't handle the neurotoxins. But the JP5 is a slow withering deterioration of the nervous system, and they won't even explore it. The Camp Lejeune guys that were certified that they had, I mean, we're talking about a guy who couldn't walk. He was on stilts. It took him 7 years to determine that he couldn't walk. All right. This is how they can use the administrative system against you. Because the first time I was like, well, there's no connection. So he spent 5 more, it took 2 years to get there, took another 5 years for him to fight the fact that he couldn't walk. So somebody just literally screwed him over because they could. And this is where it gets into we have no ramification against the political course because the laws are still not good. The Community Care Act is great, but the Recourse Act, if somebody's fighting the decision of their medical thing, 5 years is an unreasonable fight. It's completely unreasonable. That was the end of my notes on that one. I know this is a long video, and I'm probably going to get a million freaking comments about how this is off topic, but I'm going to build this into a dedicated playlist. All right. And I am going to bring in some more documentation and audio clips in the future. I'm going to be more prepared than I am in the future for this because I see what's coming, and I'm very good at seeing what's coming. You know, I say documentation. I want you. I didn't plan this, but here is all. I didn't even think about it until I looked down about seeing. This is the paperwork on this month's appointments. While they turned around and said, we think you have a job. My job is making that stack of appointments. That's my job. If they could cure my damn migraines and get it to where I could walk without stumbling, no one's going to hire me to go out on an industrial job site. And damn sure not. Look, when I'm out working, I'm making $1,500 a day. I would much rather, over the next 5 years of my life, make $3.5 to $5 million than I would to get my $18,000 a year worth of benefits out of the VA. They act like their administrative setup is designed to keep me out. They are an insurance company, and the administrative portion of the VA is designed to keep the veterans out, to keep the cost down. It is, you are not paying for what you think you're paying for. The largest number of cars in the parking lot at any VA is administrative. Vets can't find places to park because there's so many administrative people hired in the VA buildings. So, it is what it is. I am going to put my starting and ending things on this when I process the video. And I am going to make these 4K so that you can watch these on your TV. Like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.